Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. This video is going to be the first episode of Heads or Tails. This video is I'm going to be showing you the obverse and the reverse of some interesting silver coins and rounds, like this 1 ounce Aztec calendar round that I have right here. The reason I chose this round for the first episode of Heads or Tails is that this is actually my pocket piece. You know, a lot of stackers have some kind of a pocket piece that they carry around, and I've had a few over the years. But this one is my current pocket piece and has been for about the past year or so. And the reason is just because it's got some really interesting imagery on both the obverse and the reverse. And in this video, I'm going to kind of go over that and tell you a little bit about what the imagery represents. So on the obverse, the front here of this coin, we have an image of Quatermolk. And this was the last emperor of the Aztec Empire. And any of you that are familiar with the history of the Aztec Empire and their contact with the Spanish and the end of the empire, you've probably heard of Moctezuma II. Now, that was Cuauhtémoc's cousin, who was actually the emperor at the time that the Spanish made contact with the Aztecs. And he was subsequently killed by the Spanish. Then a cousin of his, named Cuitlahuatzin, and of course, you'll have to forgive my pronunciation of Aztec names here. I'm going to do my best, but no promises here that I'm getting these 100% right. So Cuitlahuatzin took over from Moctezuma, but then he quickly succumbed to smallpox, another gift from the Spanish explorers, I guess we could call them. And so once Cuitlahuatzin was out of the picture, courtesy of the smallpox, this guy, Quatermolk, took over, and he was emperor from 1520 to 1521, so not a real long reign for this guy. But basically what happened, he took over the capital city, tried to defend it from the Spanish, couldn't really rally much of a defense. He had a pretty rough start as emperor. He took over a city that was being decimated by smallpox and also was suffering at the hands of foreign conquerors. And then he was captured by the Spanish, fleeing the city in a boat with some of his friends and his family members. And when he was captured and was presented to Hernando Cortez, the conquistador, it is said that Cuauhtémolk presented Hernan Cortez with a knife and told him to kill him there on the spot. But instead, Hernan Cortez was somewhat magnanimous in this moment, and he allowed Cuauhtémolk to survive, saying something along the lines of, you fought a good battle, you tried to defend your city, you did what you could, now you're going to be my captive and you'll live. But the magnanimous attitude didn't last too long, because as the Spanish sacked the city, they did not find the amount of treasure and gold and silver that they were expecting to find. And so basically started torturing Cuauhtémolk with fire, putting his feet over the coals, to try to get him to reveal where the Aztec treasure was located. Eventually, he did reveal the location of some treasure. It wasn't quite enough to quench the thirst of the Spanish for treasure, and so their attitude towards Cuauhtémolk soured pretty significantly. And then shortly after that, there was an episode where Hernan Cortez basically accused Cuauhtémolk of plotting to kill him and the other Spaniards. And who knows, that very well could have been true. This guy was, Cuauhtémolk was, a warrior. He was from Aztec nobility. In order to become emperor, he had to have gone into battle and captured enemies for human sacrifice. So this guy was no pushover, and he probably was plotting to kill the Spaniards. Who knows? We just have the history written by the victors, of course. But he was subsequently executed along with the other Aztec captives. So that's the story of Cuauhtémolk. And it's a pretty interesting one. I think it's an interesting piece of history. And until I had looked into the imagery on this round, it was an episode I wasn't really familiar with. So he might be a character from history you've not heard of before, but his is an interesting story. On the reverse of this coin, and this is really the interesting part of this round for me, this is probably the reason that I like to carry this as my pocket piece, because this is an image of the Aztec calendar. It's basically a copy of something known as the Aztec Sunstone, which is a gigantic 50,000-pound rock that was had this image carved on it, so an enormous version of this calendar. It was buried when the Spaniards took over the capital city, I think it's Tenochtitlan, of the Aztecs, and then it wasn't discovered again until 1790, when the Spanish were excavating an area of that city And when they pulled it up, they stuck it on the side of a cathedral where it stayed for almost 100 years. And then it was put into a museum. Now we have the Aztec Sunstone on display in a museum in Mexico City. And so this calendar, I'm not sure that scholars entirely understand what's going on in this calendar. It has some similarities to other Mesoamerican calendars, but basically what I've gathered from reading about this is that this image actually contains two calendars. It has a 365-day solar calendar, which was used for things like agriculture. And then it also has a 260-day calendar encoded into it, which was used by the Aztecs for ritualistic purposes. So it kind of detailed when they would carry out religious rites and rituals. And they were rife with those. They had a really crazy, complex religion that they sort of used just to control the subjugated people, called for human sacrifice. So it was some pretty dark stuff there. But nonetheless, they did have a pretty good understanding of astronomy and calendars, and they could, by looking at the stars and things like that and using images like this, they had a very accurate calendar system. And there's just so much detail on this round that it's fun sometimes to just kind of pull it out and take a look at it, because there is just so much going on here. I mean, there's a lot of data encoded into this image. And to me, this is a lot more fascinating than an eagle or a Morgan dollar or something like that, which has some relatively simple imagery by comparison. So this is a pocket piece that you can pull out and examine from time to time and actually have kind of an interesting time just looking at all the fine detail going on there. You're looking at a copy of the Aztec Sunstone. So scholars, I don't think, are fully aware of every piece of information that is detailed on this image, but we have some understanding of it as a calendar. And I don't know, I just think it's neat. I think it's cool to have a pocket piece that you can pull out and take a look at if you're ever bored, or if you don't feel like playing around on your smartphone when you're waiting for a bus or something like that. You can pull out your round and take a look at all this interesting detail from the Aztec Sunstone. That's it for this episode of Heads or Tails, guys. And if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. You could subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate that, to catch more episodes of Heads or Tails. And let me know what you guys think. This is kind of a new segment. It's something different from what I've done in the past with videos. Let me know in the comments below what you think. If there's anything else, any other information you'd like to see included in these videos, and if you'd like to see more of these. Thank you all very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker out.